finally here. The video you have been asking me for on pretty much every video I post. No, but yeah, I'm really reluctant to call this a tutorial. So if/when I do put tutorial in the title, I'm gonna put some hard air quotes on that because this isn't really like how to draw hair. This is just kind of how I draw hair. And not only is my process always changing, but also there are many ways to draw hair. So don't think of this as a step-by-step how to draw hair. Think of this as explaining how I draw hair and also some helpful tips here and there. Okay? Sound good? Cool. I've never really filmed any tutorial type videos before, so I have no idea how this is gonna turn out. So if you like it, let me know and I could do more. Anatomy is another one that I get asked to do a lot, so give this video a thumbs up if you like it. At the end though, because we haven't even started yet, and I will do an anatomy one in the future and also anything else that you might want me to do. So okay, let's get to it. Okay, so I'm going to be drawing with my handy dandy erasable pen. It's gonna be kind of hard to like give you guys specific advice on drawing hair because I don't really know a lot of the problems you guys are having when you draw hair, but you know, I'll do my best. So one thing I noticed a lot that people do with hair, and I did this in the past too, is like thinking of hair as just like an entire like entity and just thinking about what it is. So when you think of hair, you think of like all of the individual strands and like the volume and stuff like that. And those things are important to keep in mind, but when you're in the beginning of just like sketching out something, just forget all of that. For everything that you draw, when you're putting down the base, you should only think of it in like shapes and like what it looks like when you just break it down into the most basic form that it is. So for example, when you're drawing a body, you might draw a circle and then some other stuff for the head, like a triangle shape, I don't know, and then some more like circles down here for like shoulders and stuff. It would be a lot better if I was actually drawing it, but you know. But you get the point, you always break things down into like basic simple shapes, and for some reason a lot of people forget to do that with hair because hair should be treated like that too, because that's how everything in art should be treated. So we have this head here, right? Which, by the way, another thing that might be throwing people off is a lot of people forget to draw this part of the head, like this bump back here. A lot of people just like draw a circle like right here. But if you're going to draw a circle in the base like I did here, be sure to extend this part of the head back because this is where the brain is and you want a brain. So, yay! Let's say I have like hair about this length and just like in a bob-ish shape with like bangs. And so what would that look like? Okay, so you would have bangs maybe coming off of the head. Right now I'm not thinking of specific strands or anything. I'm just thinking in like shapes, and it's like, okay, I want the hair to come out roughly around here and end around here. Maybe there's some like strands or something peeking out. Another important thing to keep in mind is where the hair is coming out. And so this person has hair parted about like right here. So if we look, so this is where the hair is parted. At this point, I don't need to do this because I just think of it whenever I'm working, but if it'll help you out, draw a line where the hair is parted like that, so then that way you can remember that like this is where the hair is coming out. So when you get into like the details later, you know that this right here is where it all begins. I think I could zoom in a little bit more. Haha. Professionalism. So here we have like a basic shape of the hair, right? You could even go more simple than this. Like, you know how before this was literally just like a square. Yeah, break it down as simple as you need it to and just be very, very loose, because a lot of people focus on specific chunks and specific strands too easily, and then that's what makes you lose this like flowiness and is what makes you come out a lot more stiff with your art, because the more you focus on small details, you don't really focus on what it all looks overall. And so then you can say, is this floofy enough? Is there enough volume? Is it the length that I want? Can I easily divide this into smaller chunks? Which you can see I kind of already started doing here with like this and stuff. And so then this way I can be like, okay, well maybe it's too floofy over here because maybe the character needs to have more thin, straight hair, or you can be like, it's not poofy enough, or I should try out this different style. And doing this helps you really just focus on the silhouette and then like the mass and volume of the hair instead of focusing right away on, can I make this look like hair? Once you get this like basic shape down, then you can start going in and adding more chunks. Like I was saying earlier, I kind of already started doing that because since I have drawn hair a lot and hair is something that I've really focused on in the past, I don't really need to do this step by step anymore. But I would recommend starting off in the most basic shapes that you can, and then you can start picking out which parts are like its own separate chunks and which parts are like individual strands. So like I always add these little hair things in my art, don't even know what those are supposed to be. Another thing that you should definitely keep in mind is like hair is pretty like unpredictable. It's like this chunk like right here, instead of making it just this flat shape like that, I'm gonna make it like a little bit more like curved, and there's like a bump in here, and this pen is dying, dear lord. Okay, well this was unplanned and unexpected. If there's a reason for hair to be really pristine and exact, then by all means go for it. But if you're just drawing like regular, average, everyday person, odds are they aren't going to have like perfect, smooth, sleek hair with like no strands popping out or anything. I used to add more individual strands like this and stuff. I don't really do it as much anymore, but you definitely can. And yeah, those are some basic things to keep in mind when you get started. I'm gonna get a different pen and tell you some other tips and tricks. Thought I had another black erasable pen, but I don't. But the show must go on, so I'm using this navy blue one. I don't think anyone cares. The next thing I want to touch on is like remembering the different parts of hair, if that makes any sense. It probably doesn't make any sense right now, but just trust me. When you're thinking of like different parts, I do it in one of two ways. I'll always have the bangs because most of my characters have bangs, because you know. And so there will be the bangs like right here, and then there can either be a spot here and then on the other side, or there can be a spot here on top and then here on the bottom. And so this would be one chunk right here, right? This is one part. So let's say this orange one is one section. We can add a second section. Let's say she has her hair up in like a half ponytail. So this top part can be section number 2. And then we can have hair at the bottom here, which would be section number 3. You'll notice that when I was sketching this out, I kind of kept to the same rule that I kept over here, where I'm blocking things in kind of more basic shapes first and not really focusing on like the specific details. I suddenly lost all words in my vocabulary. Instead of like going in and just trying to style it perfectly, I was thinking, how is the hair sectioned off? There's the bangs and then the top part and then the bottom part. And this can work with pretty much any hairstyle. Let's say we keep the same like idea for hairstyle again. So we'll have chunk 1, but then this time, let's say it's right here and right here, kind of similar to the first one. So we will have this like front part, which would be part 1, and then we could have parts right here, which can be part 2. And so we have this, then these would both be part 2, because even though they're still like their own individual pieces, they're like the same on the either side, like they're symmetrical pieces. I don't know if that makes any sense, but. And then we could even go like another step further and say she has like her third part back here. Instead of like right here where there's one in the front and then one on top and then one on the side, there is one on top and then there are 2 two on the sides and then one in the back. Instead of it being like front, top, bottom, it's like front, middle, back. Okay, Zola. Yo, what's up? It's Oliver from the future. One thing that I forgot to mention when I was talking about these different hair sections, pretty much any hairstyle can be divided into sections, but if you are a beginner, I would recommend trying to keep it to like 3 sections if you can. Like try not to go over 3. You can use as many different sections as you want and create really crazy hairstyles. But again, if you are still new to this, I would recommend keeping it to as little sections as possible just to make it easier for yourself. And then once you start getting used to drawing hair a little bit more, you can add more sections and get really crazy and make that insane anime hair. All right, back to the video. So the things that I've been going over so far are more things to keep in mind and put into practice when you're beginning drawing. And so now I'm going to kind of talk about when to add like more details into the hair. My dog is licking my big toe. For this, I'm gonna start focusing on just one specific chunk. So let's look at this hairstyle. Let's say we have this chunk right here. Now this looks really, really flat, and that can definitely work for like some drawings, but a lot of the time hair isn't just sitting there like straight. It can be like twisted and turned, it could be blowing in the wind, it could be doing a whole bunch of stuff. And while this can definitely work, sometimes it's really important to know how to draw hair in a little bit more of a dynamic way. So let's say we have this chunk of hair. This can definitely work, but if you want there to be more movement in your hair, we'll erase that. When you have a hair chunk like this, a lot of people tend to forget that there are two sides to it, and I think that a good way to think of it is like a ribbon. So if we have this as a ribbon, it can like turn inside out like this. And it's like, you would see the top part here, and then the bottom part you would see the inside. So the top has the outside, the bottom has the inside. When you draw hair like this, instead of just flat and simple like this, it just makes the drawings seem so much more lively. Let's see, do I have any examples? So you notice a lot of the times when I draw hair, this is something that I do very, very often. So here's the top, and then here's the inside, and then here's the top, and then here's the inside. Pretty much every drawing of hair I have is like that. You can see multiple different parts of the hair because it just makes it seem so much more like lively, and that the person is actually doing something, and that that person is like living in a world with an environment around them. And another thing that you'll probably notice is that like even then when I'm doing this more like dynamic hair pose, is this a whatever, you'll notice that when I'm drawing hair in this more dynamic way, I'm still keeping to the same principle of sketch out basic shapes first and be very loose. And you'll notice I'm not just drawing like one line and then another line and then another line, because then it can come off as a lot more stiff. So now it comes to the part where you want to add more detail to it, because this doesn't look like hair. The way hair works is like, let's say this is the part, well, it is the part that's coming out of the head. So there's going to be a lot more strands up on here and a lot more gathered here, and then when it gets down there's going to be less and less, because this is where the hair is starting to like spread out and move away from each other and just kind of do its own thing. And then at the bottom there will be more lines and strands again, because this is where the chunks of the hair are starting to like regroup. Although there's going to be less down here than there is up here. Up here is where there's going to be more like shading and strands and all that fun stuff, because this is where all of the hair is closest together. I just dropped my pen. This part that like twists around, I always like making this strand the thinnest strand. You don't have to do that, but that's just how I like to do things. So I'll do this. I'll maybe even add like a little section in here. So if I was coloring in this strand of hair, this part right here wouldn't be colored in because that's just like a gap. One thing you can do is like fully connect this line and make that its own separated strand, and that would look fine. I personally don't like to do that. I always like to kind of separate my strands like in like my chunks halfway through, about maybe a little bit more, just because I feel like it makes it look more like a cohesive chunk of hair. And then at this point you just think about how separated the hair would be. And so like down here, since it's flying out, oh god, Florida weather. At this point, like down here, the hair is going to be more separated. And so there would be maybe like a bigger chunk and then a tinier chunk and then another little thing. And this part is really just like trial and error and figuring out what looks good and just kind of thinking about the way the hair is in your drawing and then just applying this knowledge to that. Then you can start adding more individual strands. The way I do that is by just drawing lines inside. Like I said earlier. Zola. Anyways, as I was saying, you can add lines that extend out of it. I used to do that, but I don't really do that anymore just because I don't think it really works with my style. If you want to make them almost like tiny little hair chunks, and if you're a digital artist or like painting, one thing that you can do is paint those so then that way they're like on top of everything. I actually think I have an example. So you'll notice here, like for the most part I was keeping the same general rules, but then for these smaller strands of hair, I just painted them straight in with the color, and there's no like line art or anything on there. That can definitely help add a lot of depth too. You would just add like basic shading and stuff, which I'll go over in a minute. But first, have to wait for Florida to get its shit together and stop being rainy. Okay, so now you might be thinking to yourself, Oliver, that's fine and dandy. Can you use that on a person? Yes, you can. I've done it many times. Okay, so if we draw a human, as I tend to do, really you use this same information here, but then apply it to a human head. It's really pretty easy once you've practiced it and kind of experienced drawing. This sentence isn't going anywhere. We'll draw the same way we did here, but on a human head. Crazy, I know, right? Another little tip is that a lot of people tend to draw hair directly like against the head, which is fine. Like, it's all fine and dandy, like you can do that every now and again. I do that, but I could definitely recommend, instead of drawing it directly on the hair, you see like this top part of, wait, can I zoom in more? Aha! This part of the hair right here. Instead of drawing it like flat like this, just add a little of that. And like if this is the hairline, just draw it going up and then down a little bit. Yeah, once you take everything that I've said into consideration, this part can be pretty easy. It definitely takes a little bit of practice and knowing when to do what. Hair is one of those things where I feel like a lot of people just overthink it and they don't like really sit down and like think about it, you know? They just are like, okay, well, this is hard, so let's just say it's hard and then fail at it. When I draw a finished illustration of the person, a lot of details end up going into like the coloring stage, because there's only so many details you can add in a sketch, in a line art, when it comes to hair without it looking really like, not really stiff, I'm not quite sure what the word I'm looking for is, but you can just get a lot more depth and make your hair just look a lot more convincing if you save some of the details for like the coloring phase. Obviously like highlights and shading and stuff, but also like creating individual strands and stuff like that. A lot of that just comes off as a lot more real feeling with hair if you just save it for the coloring phase. Alright, I sketched this head off camera because I just feel like I would be repeating myself if I showed the process, and also this totally is in here because I messed up and I'm trying to hide the mistake. Nope, not at all. When you are coloring hair, I would really recommend starting off with a mid-tone, and honestly when you're coloring anything, I would suggest starting off with a mid-tone just because it makes it easier for blending and stuff. Just keep in mind where shades and highlights are going to be. Speaking of, where on the hair would the shading and highlights be? It definitely depends on like hairstyle and hair texture and like the, what's it called, the light source. I'm smart. It all depends on that sort of stuff, but as a general rule of thumb, just wherever anything is like poofing out or close together, if that makes any sense. So like if we're looking at this hair, there would probably be a little bit of highlights up here, but then a lot of highlights down here because this part is high up. So if we assume that there's just basic light source of like a sun right here coming down into this, I can't really draw it because it's going off the paper. The light would be hitting this part because it's higher up, and then this part because it's sticking out, and there wouldn't really be as much in here because this part is curving in. So if you're using markers, I would recommend feathering it out like this. Or another thing that you can do is add something like that. How you add shades and highlights really depends on your art style. I like to do a combination of both this feathery thing and this like harsh line. I would also recommend following the curve of the hair, so then that way any streakiness can just come off as like, you know, it's hair. And then for something like this, like down here, I would do just feathery overall, because if we look at the top, it's like, there's like, in theory, like a circle underneath here, which is your head. And so it's like, it's kind of wrapping around that shape up here, whereas down here it's a lot more free-flowing, and so there's less structure to it. Then I would take a lighter color and then just blend that out, or if you want to get crazy, use a completely different color, like this pink. And then when we add shading, like I said earlier, there would be a lot of shading and stuff up here because this is where hair is really close together. And then there would also be shading down here. And then this is also where I would start adding like more depth and like individual strands. I don't like drawing individual strands as like each line. Like I said before, I'll sometimes do that here and there, but for the most part, to make it seem more believable, I'll just add like different like shades of, this isn't making any sense. Let me just show you. I would usually just like add lines like this, and it would like give the illusion that there's like thinner strands in there. And then once you start lighter, you can also go in with some darker colors and blend it out. How much of this you do really depends on your style and what you enjoy doing. Like if you have a very line art heavy style, you wouldn't have to add as many of this like shading detail and stuff when you color. If you have a very line artless style, I would recommend adding more shading details and highlight details, so then that way it can kind of give off the effect that it is in fact hair. Yeah, and now look at this. You're doing hair. Way to go. Look at you, you champion. Yeah, as you're shading, just remember the stuff that you already know about like light sources and whatnot. Since this part is very loose and not really wrapping around anything, I would go back to that like feather highlight blending thing, which is just like, instead of going like this all the way through, you would go like this, and then when you get to the end, just like flick it, and then you get that feathering effect. In places like this, I wouldn't really add any highlights because this part is turned inward. And if you remember when I was talking about over here, I turned that outward. And if you want to make it turn inward, there you go. You literally just do the opposite of how I do that. Add more shading here. And this is a time where I would do feather for the shading too. So the same way that I showed you to do highlights, I would do that exact same thing here. If you are a beginner or you just don't practice hair all that much and you want to practice it a little bit more, I would recommend this sort of hairstyle / hair texture thing because it's easier to draw, and I feel like hair is a little bit notorious in the art community for different textures being difficult to draw, especially like curly hair and stuff. A lot of people find that difficult, and it is more difficult. But I would recommend starting here, and then once you do start drawing different hair textures, you'll actually find that it's a lot of the same techniques, just applied in different ways. So let's say we're drawing a character who has like really curly hair. When you think of the curly hair, again, just think of it as basic shapes first. The hair will probably be poofier and more wavy and stuff, and it's going to be really messy, but you want it to be messy in the beginning because the more messy, the more loose it'll be, and then you can just touch it up later. You see, like here, it's general shape, and then we can start going in and thinking of like different chunks. So maybe there's like other chunks here, then maybe each side has 2 bigger chunks. It's really fast and rushed, but you get my point. It doesn't matter what hairstyle or hair texture I'm drawing. It's all just the same rules, you just use them in different ways. So like for this curly hair, for example, it's still basic shapes and drawing different sides of hairs and adding volume and thinking of sections. It's just different. Like since the hair is curlier and bigger, there will be more sections, and you will see more sides of the hair because the hair is turning in different ways. And lastly, the biggest tip I can give to you guys after watching this video, hair might still give you trouble, and that's perfectly fine. Watching a hair tutorial on YouTube isn't going to fix all of your hair problems. It's just going to put ideas into your brain, but you can't actually physically improve on drawing hair unless you practice. Sure, a video can help, but it's only by drawing hair over and over and over again that you can really truly get better at it. So if you're still having a hard time drawing hair after this video, please don't get discouraged. The only way to get better with art is practice. So that's the biggest piece of advice that I could give to you. But yeah, all of that being said, I hope that this was helpful to you. Again, I haven't really done this sort of quote-unquote tutorial type video before, so I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not really good at speaking on my channel. I'm not really good at speaking if If you watch my channel, you know I'm not very good at speaking, so I hope I explained things well enough. If you still have questions, let me know in the comment section down below, and I will try my best to answer them. Thank you for watching, and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and let me know if you want me to do more of these tutorial style-ish videos. I know a lot of people want me to make one about anatomy, so let me know if you're interested in that, and also comment down below any other tutorials you want me to make, and I will make it if you guys want me to. And if you aren't subscribed, consider subscribing, because I make a new video every single week. It's mostly art videos, but every now and again I'll just post whatever I feel like posting. And if you want to follow me on any of my social media, they will be on screen now, as well as linked in the description below. I am most active on Instagram, so if you have an Instagram, I would highly recommend following me over there, because that is where I will be most likely posting my art and giving updates on YouTube videos and all that sort of fun stuff. And there's a video on screen now and in the iCard for you to check out if you want, please. I would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this helpful, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.